Okay, this would be a 1953 Alice Chalmers Hd9 crawler loader. Our father bought this loader new to use in the logging operation. It was one of the first ones to reach California. I think the story was the Alice Chalmers rep salespeople showed up and took this picture with other pictures. Later, they provided this picture. It's stamped Alice Chalmers Manufacturing on the back. After the first summer in the woods, it was brought in and a local company built a canopy for it. Alice Chalmers factory did not provide any type of canopies at the time. It was used in the operation until 1961. About that time, the logging economy in California got pretty sluggish. Father moved the logging operation to British Columbia, Canada for a season to work for some friends that had moved up there. This Hd9, an Hd15A dozer winch tractor, and an Hd11B dozer winch tractor. It didn't work out very well, only lasted one season. The Hd9 and the Hd15 were sold in British Columbia through a local AC dealer. The Hd11 did migrate back home to us. Okay, this is the follow-up on the Hd9 loader that's loading the logs in the black and white picture. This is the logging truck that it was loading. So you got to have a little imagination here, but this is a military World War II truck. Started out as a 6x6. It's an International, was made by International. These trucks were pretty plentiful after the war, all the way up into the 50s. And everybody tried to buy them and use them for whatever, but it was a tough go then. I mean, they were reasonably cheap because there were so many of them, but it was still a lot of money. It didn't really matter then. I mean, it was just a lot of money. After my brother and I studied that photo for some time, we decided that this had to be the right truck, and we were able to identify it. So this truck started out as a 6x6 in the military, and there's nothing on this truck other than part of the cab and the main frame, which has been added onto its original. The engine's different. It's got a 450 red diamond in it. I believe that's what that is. Of course, the front end is a solid front end. It would have had a front wheel drive at the time. It's got a different radiator in it. It's like right here. This was all added onto. You can kind of see where that is. Doesn't even have the same original hood on it. I know that. You can see where the frames have been plated there. It's been welded onto. Has different rear ends in it. Doesn't have the split type rear ends. It's got a banjo type rear end. Rear ends were the first thing to go when they'd put 40, 50, 60,000 pounds of logs on there. It has a 5 and a 3 transmission, which I don't know what it would have had originally. It was probably just a 5-speed in those trucks. Of course, these trucks are all made for the war, you know, for the Department of Defense or whatever. The GMC, Chevrolet, International, I think Studebaker, I'm not sure who else, but they were all pretty much made the same spec, whatever the government wanted. So that's where this truck originated. This is the first 10-wheeler I ever drove. It was pretty cool too. I started driving it in the 1960s, and then I think it's been parked out here on the ranch property. Probably hasn't run since the mid-1970s. It got, after it was done logging, they actually put a 5th wheel on it, and they used it for a low bed truck for a little while, and then of course you can imagine it got to be pretty obsolete by the late 1950s, and then got a dump box on it, and it's been out here ever since. We've moved it around several times here, just trying to make sure we didn't totally destroy it. It was running when it was parked, actually, so we don't have a long-range plan for it, but anyway, we know that the logging gear that was on it in that picture, we ended up we torched that all. It all got scrapped probably back in the 1980s because we knew we weren't going to be using it for a logging truck anymore. So we identified it and said that was enough. Some more to that story is actually at that time, or even maybe earlier than that picture, the truck belonged to another fella that was basically a Jippo log trucker who was hauling logs for my dad and his brother-in-law at the time. And the story goes, I guess he might have just got behind on his fuel payments because my father and my uncle also owned a service station business. And the fellow that was hauling the logs with it, like I say, it was a tough goat no matter who you were. And he got behind and owed them some money, and they kept bugging him, and he finally just up and said, "You guys take the truck," and that's kind of how we ended up with it. And yes, now that we're collecting and restoring these older tractors, we really wish we'd have kept all that logging gear off of it, because it would have been a pretty good story in itself. So that's what's under that load of logs there with that big giant log going on the top.